after a little bit of time, the various render had been complete, or better, I had just one render, and I saved everything as TIFF. I had just one camera position, and I rendered it, and I decided to use different render layers, so different render element or render pass. Now I import them all inside Photoshop. I can drag and drop just one inside my file and then apply all the other, or I can use this one file script and load file into stack. I can decide to use different files, so I can browse my files, and I just needed to find them inside Render Academy, render, and here I have all the render passes that I obtained. So I press on OK. Here I have them all. I don't want to align automatically or to create smart object after loading layer, and I press OK. So now V-Ray is, so now Photoshop is loading all the various layers inside one single file. And that's it. You can see here the various layers. So I save this result inside my post-production, and this will be render 01 because I decided to do other render later, and I save as PSD. That is my Photoshop document. I save here. I don't want to see anymore this message, and this is my compatibility maximization. So while he's saving, I can show you here I have different layers, and they are the various render elements. So I have the RGB color, I have the diffuse filter, that is the flat RGB value of the various layers. I have this global illumination. Something is quite strange here, some parts are missing, that's okay. I have this V-Ray lighting, that is the direct light. I have this reflection, they are very important. I have refraction. I decided to save this self-illumination for the outdoor light, but nothing got saved. I have some specular. They are similar to the reflection, but they are the reflection, the direct reflection of the light emitters. And I have this wire color, that is the flat wireframe color of the various objects. So this is quite useful if you want to select, for example, the sofa. You can click just here around. Sorry, I need this one. I can select just the sofa. I can deselect, and you see the sofa is selected. This is because V-Ray doesn't know what I'm using. All the files have been saved in TIFF file format, and I'm working in RGB, red, green, blue. So my image mode is RGB, and I have 16-bit per channel. Somebody is using the linear mode 32-bit per channel. I'm quite comfortable with 16 because 32 is good for the exposure and the HDR or AXR post-production, but with 16 I told you I'm comfortable and I can obtain a good result without having so heavy and linear corrected, gamma corrected picture. So I'm quite satisfied in this way. Of course, 8-bit per channel, they could be too much restrictive because this amount of number, they are the amount, the size of bit that define the red, the green, and the blue channel. So if I have 8-bit per channel, it means that I have 2 at power of 8. So it means 256 value. So I have a range between 0 and 255 per each single channel. That actually means 16 million of color. So I can have 16 million of combination here in between. While working with 16-bit per channel, it means that I have 2, and 2 is the bit, so it's 0 or 1, at power of 16. So I have 65,000 possibilities per single channel. That increasing at the power of 3 because I have red, green, and blue. I can have this amount of shades, this amount of combination. That is a huge number. So you can divide by 1 million and you can obtain the amount of color, but it's huge amount of color. So I'm working with RGB, 16-bit per channel. And according to the file size, Ctrl-Alt-I, I have this file that is 300 dpi, 2500 per 1800 pixel that can be printed at 21 per 15 centimeter. So if you ask me if this render is high resolution or low resolution, well, is always and every time relative. If you need to print on 21 per 15 centimeter is perfect solution, because you don't waste time in obtaining more pixel and you don't have to scale your render for your final image. Of course, if you need to print bigger resolution, like, I don't know, 2 meter per 3 meter poster billboard, well, we may discuss about this resolution that maybe is not enough. Of course, the resolution depends on the distance from the viewer to the printed panel. So generally we are used to print at 300 dpi, but for some reason we can even print at 50 dpi. It really depends on what we are going to search and distance from the viewer to the printed image. So, okay, enough talking. Now we can discuss here about the post-production. So as first step, generally I assign the profile, or I need to convert my profile. So I want to work with Adobe RGB 1998. I like to work with this because I have a good representation of the various colors inside my document, and I like how they are displayed. First passage is with this render RGB that actually is my beauty pass. And I want to apply one filter, that is the camera raw filter. Now I don't apply the camera raw filter directly on the layer because maybe for some reason I want to move back and to do other operations. So before applying this, I right click on the layer and I convert to smart object. Doing so, this layer will be a container of various operations. It became like a bin, and you see this icon here. So now I can apply filter, camera raw filter, and I start with camera raw because it gives me possibility to do a photographic post-production. Camera raw is quite similar to Lightroom if you want to do photographic post-production, and here I have my picture. So as I told you before, we can define the auto balance here using the sliders in post-production, and you can use this white balance tool to pick one neutral shade, and automatically the balance will be white. Of course, if you click on something saturated with certain color, for example this violet, everything will be messed up because you need to pick one neutral color. So I start clicking around until I find something that I like, and I don't want to have too cold. So you see automatically he suggested me -10 and +1, so maybe I can use -8 to recover a little bit of orangish effect. Camera raw is very cool because I have here the histogram that represent me how the brightness of the pixel is spread here inside the file. So I have the black and I have the white. I have the shadows and the lights, and I have the mid-tone. Here they are named exposure. So I can click directly on the histogram, or I can move here the values, and I can increase my exposure. And because I'm working with 16-bit per channel, you may notice that if I decrease the exposure, the scene is getting dark, but is naturally fading to black, because the light emitting zone, they are brighter. So, I mean, if I have the white on the paper and the white here in the outdoor, they are two different kind of white. This white is less white than this one. The energy is less. So if I reduce the exposure, you may notice that this became very dark as well as the dish, while this part still remains quite bright. Of course, there are limits. I can't expect to reduce it too much, but this can give you an idea of what is happening. So if I do a double click on the slider, I can reset to the default value. Here I can increase a little bit the exposure, so I can have better result. Then if I want, I can use the contrast, and here you have a visual representation of what contrast is. You know, when you increase the contrast, you have more white and more black, and this is exactly what happens in your histogram. While if you reduce, you have more mid-tone, this washed out gray effect. Actually, I don't dislike the low contrast because instead of working too much with this contrast amount, I like to use the clarity that is boosting the mid-tone contrast, enhancing a lot the brightness and the detail of my image. So if here I use 40 in clarity, I can even decrease a little bit the contrast here. If you press P as preview, you can see before and after. And if you want, you can press this one, so you can have before and after, side to side. Or you can have something like this, where I have the before and the after. Now, of course, the P is this one, so the before is this one and the after is this. I can Ctrl plus or Ctrl minus to zoom in and zoom out, and you can see the benefit of this tool. There is still something that required to be patched because here something went wrong during the render, but you see how the tones are more natural. So, okay, let's continue with the brightness inside this image. Now, I want to manage the highlight and the whites. So I want to extend this to the right part. So I want to benefit of all the histogram. If you click here, these icons on the top, you can activate this warning for the overexposed and the underexposed area. So for the clipped pixel when they are over white or over black, so when we have this lack of detail, we have the bright red warning. It means I have to try to keep the red warning as less as possible using this method or using the highlight. The same happens with the shadows. So if I increase, you see how dark is this area. And now I don't want to make my shadow so dark. Actually, I want to boost a little bit the brightness inside the shadows. I can use this, or I can increase in this way. Actually, I want to obtain the black as black and then give a little bit of light to these shadows. And something like this may work. So check the before and check after what happened to the scene. I activate again the warning just to be sure that nothing is going to be overexposed, you see in that area, because I have this cycle mode and I'm not able to see exactly what is happening. So I remove it and I can use the highlight or directly the white to clamp and recover a part of brightness there. If you don't want to affect all the picture, but just some part of the picture, you can use the adjustment brush or the graduated filter. For the moment, I can use the graduated filter where I can click and drag. So I have this graduation, this graduated fade out. And here I want to work on the highlight and a little bit maybe on the exposure. So you see, I have this area, I can show you with a mask color. This green area affects how these parameters are affecting the image. So here is very green, here is not so green. It means where is very green, this value are affecting the image. Where it's not so green, obviously they are not affected. So the final result is something like this. I balanced the amount of brightness arriving here from the left. And it's working quite well. Second tab is the curve. I don't want to manage the curve here. I can manage them inside Photoshop later. Here I can sharp some detail if you need. Actually, you need to work at 100% when you work with the detail and the noise reduction. With this, I can increase, you see, the detail. Like I can seek the radius. I can increase the details here. And I can mask the detail over radius, so obtaining something like this. And this helps me to boost the detail. I don't want to exaggerate with this one because it gives kind of fake results. So I use just 10, it's even too much, you know, you can use 5. I have this noise reduction, so I can work on the luminance, and everything becomes very smooth. It's nice somehow, the result, but it's absolutely not what I want, so I need to reduce this value. And I just need to find out a certain amount of luminance detail that I want to preserve. This can help me to reduce the noise. It's very important to do a zoom in. Even if I told you to use at 100%, you can try with 200% to check if everything is disappearing, because this luminance is decreasing the amount of detail. So really beware when you are applying it. Now another part, so I want to fit in view of my image. I have this HSL grayscale. Is a good idea if you want to have a black and white render, because you can work on the black and white color, changing the brightness or the darkness of this color. I don't want to convert in black and white, but maybe I want to do a fine-tuning of my color. So the first is in the hue, the saturation, and the luminance. With the hue I can change the color. So for example, if I take that green, you see I can make it similar to aqua, and if I take the aqua, now I can make them more close to blue, or I can make them more yellow. I don't dislike the green that is moving, is slightly shifting to this. I think is a good result. You can see the before and after. Maybe it's too much, but yeah, something like this is less saturated. And I can take the purple, I can make the purple more violetish. To pay attention with this parameter, because also you can have some color scattered inside the scene. And I have the orange lights there, you see, I like them. I can change the reds, not so many, and the yellows. This part affected the hue. Now I can move to the saturation, so I can oversaturate the green color, or I can reduce this selectively the saturation of them, as well as the orange. I like the orange color, so maybe I can boost them a little bit. And the yellow on the sofa. Have some reds? No. The blue, we have some aqua color in this area, I see them. And the blues. Then we can work on the luminance, so if we want the green to be darker or brighter, we can affect it. And yes, I would like to have them a little bit brighter. The blue on the magazine, I want it to be brighter as well. I want to decrease a little bit the brightness of these pink values, and the yellow of the sofa maybe can be brighter as well. So before and after, the result is something like this. Another important step here in this camera raw is this tab, the split toning. I like it really a lot because I can define a colorization for the highlight and a colorization for the shadows. And because I am in 16-bit per channel, I have more control instead of 8-bit per channel when you manage just the red, just the white, or just the black. Here we have 65,000 values between black and white. So I can increase my saturation, and this is the colorization over the highlight. Generally I use a yellowish, orangish, not too green color. Then I decrease this one. I increase totally the saturation, and I want to obtain a bluish greenish color, kind of aqua. Then I reduce it, and now is the moment to find a proper colorization for the highlight. Something like this may work. So you see I unbalanced my picture on the warm color, and now I try to balance it back with a saturation over these shadows. As ending passage, I can decide how much the shadows are dominant on the highlight. Again, I think that something like this may work. Probably I'm too much saturated. Yeah. I like this because I can split the highlight and the shadow not only in the brightness as they are, obviously black and white, but I can apply a saturation and a hue to them. So one became orangish and the other became bluish. So it's a typical color correction and color balancing. Here we have some lens correction where we can apply or remove the fringe, the fringe or the fringing on the various image, the borders. I don't use this so much because I prefer not to have that. And we can apply distortion if for some reason you want your picture to be distorted, or remove distortion just in case you apply distortion. We have the aspect, rotation, some horizontal fix. I like how Camera Raw is applying this, even if I don't want to use them. And I have the vignetting. Vignetting is that effect that makes all the border of the picture underexposed because of the curvature of the lens, and so the light in the real world camera has problem to pass through the lens. So I can use this vignetting to create this kind of effect. This is too much, obviously, but it gives the idea. Vignetting can be negative, so dark, or it can be positive, and this kind of brightness. And also here I have the benefit of the 16 bit per channel. We can apply some grain. I don't want. We can calibrate our camera, and we can save the preset. So if you want to apply the same result to many pictures, you can here save the preset. This can be Luca preset for Render Academy. Okay, I can, so RA is the acronym of Render Academy. And I save all the transformation I did, and I use OK. So every time I click here, I can apply this. Now I press OK. So the transformation will be transferred from my Camera Raw to here, to Photoshop. And if I want, I can double click on the Camera Raw. And because I used the smart object, you see all the parameters, they are stored here inside. I don't want, sincerely. And if you have the feeling that the Camera Raw is too intense, you can click here, double click here, and you can define how intense is the transformation of Camera Raw. So let's suppose you want to mix 50% of Camera Raw and 50% of the original. Just press here 50 and that's it. Or 80%, generally I use 80, 85%, so I want to benefit a lot of these Camera Raw settings without exaggerating over my original picture.